Welcome to another episode of our show, Solutionaries, which is one of the programs we do on Regenerative Media TV. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, and I'm glad to be here. Beautiful sunny day here in Southern Colorado. And today I got the honor of speaking with Kelly Lovell with her organization, Younga World. But she's very committed and dedicated to creating an organization that has global impact. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
And I always like to start off with kind of the human side of the people we have on the show and can get into the different projects that you're doing in collaboration with the United Nations, and you have a festival and just helping to empower youth around the world. But just give us a little bit of a background of who you are and what got you into the work that you're doing.
Of course. Well, again, hello, everyone. My name is Kelly, and my passion is bridging opportunity gaps to prepare young people for the future. So, extensively, most of my work is rooted around youth-led innovation, future skills education, and inclusivity programs that ensure that both today and tomorrow's leaders are working together to co-create solutions to solve our world's most pressing challenges. Out of those pressing challenges, of course, one comes to mind of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so a lot of our initiatives over the years have focused on the role of young people in contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and spearheading solutions locally and globally. One form that takes is my organization, Younga. I founded Younga in 2020 during the year of the UN 75th anniversary and also the year of the pandemic, when the future of young people kind of shattered before our eyes. And we had all this bright young talent around the world that was then put in idle and on hold in their homes, locked up and not without access to education and the opportunities that a lot of these young leaders were relying on to build their futures. And so I founded Younga as a way to unite the global youth sector in a concerted effort to create a platform of impact that young people around the world could come together, and most importantly, and create intergenerational solutions where we brought the world leaders, executives of the world of industry, pioneers, UN policymakers, former heads of states and government to come together with young people around focused masterminds surrounding the UN Sustainable Development Goals, whether that's climate action, mental health education, inclusion and equality programs, and so on, to co-create solutions. And now we're entering our 5th year with Younga. And over these last 5 years, we've grown it into the largest global platform for impact for youth in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we have created free education and training for nearly 8,000 young people in 185 countries, 80% of which are from underrepresented and underserved populations. So a core focus of what we're doing with Younga is not just emboldening and empowering existing leaders, but most importantly, creating pipelines for inclusive innovation and making sure young people who are left out or don't have access to opportunity are getting to have a hand in shaping the solutions for our future.
Wow, amazing. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade, right? During the beginning of the pandemic. And actually, that was a very pivotal point for Earthstock Foundation, too. We used to every year do an event called the Earthstock Festival, and it was actually designed with the various spokes of what we call regenerative culture in mind, as opposed to, a typical festival. You go there, there's music, there's refreshments, maybe there's some workshops or programs or a yoga class, but the idea is that we had actually designed it in the real world as a festival, but also in the virtual world to contain the various elements of, again, regenerative culture. So we had a whole main stage area. We had a theater that was showing cutting edge films around sustainability and things like green economics, regenerative agriculture. We had a whole wisdom keepers village where we were basically sharing information about the organization and the individuals that are doing the work as far as preserving indigenous wisdom and some of the traditional knowledge that luckily still exists in the world. And then we had a whole area for green technology. So it was very interesting because we had been doing that event for years. And then we were planning a very large festival in August of 2020. And of course, because of the pandemic and the mandates, we weren't able to operate. So we decided to really focus on germinating the nonprofit organization of Earthstock Foundation, dedicated to educating people and empowering them with the tools to take stock in the people and planet and the future. So amazing, it was a time where I know a lot of us pivoted, and of course the world was shutting down, and it was gave a lot of us an opportunity to incubate these ideas. So out of curiosity, I mean, this is incredible what you're doing. What's a little bit of Kelly's story? Like, how did you get involved? I mean, one doesn't just coincidentally fall into this type of work. What's a little bit about your personal background and what really brought you to that doorway of creating Younga World?
Yes. Well, first, I want to just comment on what you just shared, because I think you identified some key underlying principles that I think are really important for leaders, entrepreneurs, and just builders of our new world. Is essentially a lot of the models are shifting. So when I first did Younga, it was meant to be a one-off thing. It was originally how Younga came about was I was planning a global youth takeover, next gen takeover of UNGA, the UN General Assembly, pre-pandemic. That I was planning that January, February, and then the world shut down, and obviously the idea could no longer work. And so I took the mantle myself to then create this global virtual event takeover that involved all the youth stakeholders of the world to come together in a unified effort. And what I learned from that is really what we're moving towards is, as you said, rather than a one-off event, we really want to look at models that are focused on sustainability, circularity, and education. And that's what really became the seed that germinated with Younga. Was it wasn't just the event itself. We ended up creating a community of mission-aligned young people around the world where they could feel that they mattered, that they belonged, that they felt that they were respected, and their ideas contributed to something. And we created education vehicles. Our most popular program is not our festival and our event, but actually our youth delegate scholarship program, where we create free education and upscale 2,000 youth delegates annually, where they're entered into the skills accelerator, where they get 30 hours of live masterclass training and consultations with industry leaders and policy working groups and all these things that are really focused on building their capabilities to become leaders in their own community. And so I think that pivot to education and community building and the circularity of that, of how do you create sustained impact, not one-off big flashy things, but how do you harness that energy and potential into continued pathways for impact and innovation. And so that's a core element of why Younga has grown the way it has, and why we're still doing this annually, because that was not my necessarily intent when I first started it. But when you give the freedom for the seed you plant to sprout in its own way, it can really surprise you in wondrous ways.
Incredible, incredible. It's just listening to you speak and all the things you're doing. I can see why Mitchell Gold from the UN Office of the Future wanted us to meet. And what's interesting too is, again, you're really focused on youth, which is amazing. And that's such an important component, because the information, the knowledge, the wisdom of the youth, of course, as being leaders of tomorrow, are empowered with the tools to make the right decisions to kind of not only preserve the planet, but really, I would say, to kind of save humanity from itself. I know there's a lot of environmentalists out there who are talking about save the earth, but I think after billions of years and as much damage as we do sometimes to the planet, we saw actually during the pandemic that a lot of the global ecosystem started to regenerate and actually heal itself. We just had to diminish and mitigate the level of negative impact that a lot of human beings and industry and other equatorial countries that don't have the technology or the resources or the infrastructure to be able to do the types of things that are needed to help do conservation work about the environment. So, I mean, and again, fascinating. What's your background? I mean, just hearing you speak, and not only the depth of what you're doing and relating to sustainable development goals. Um, what's your background? How did you get involved in this? One doesn't just stumble into pioneering a global organization that's empowering youth and working with the United Nations. And of course, I know recently, we'll talk in a minute. I know you were a part of some global events, but just a little bit more about who is Kelly Lovell, this incredibly dynamic being who again, love your shirt today. Great choice. Um,
Thank you.
how'd you get involved?
Yeah, so I guess I can start with some of my backstory. So honestly, the way I involved, I think for me, Younga became the community. I wanted to create Younga as the community I wish I always had, and create the opportunities that I struggled to access, and build pathways for young people that I found on my own. And so to understand that, you need to know my backstory. And I guess, where should I start? Um, when I was a teen, I was your classic overachiever, wanting to be involved in all the clubs, do all the things, extracurriculars out of the wazoo, and so on. And when I was when I entered high school, I became ill and ended up being hospitalized for most of my teenage years. And so during that experience, everything that I involved myself in and all the labels that I used to define myself were essentially shattered. And I really didn't know who I was beyond all the roles and things I did. Like, I defined myself as the dancer, as the club president, as the academic. I used these roles and the things I did as definitions of myself. And so when those were taken away from me, I felt empty. I didn't have anything of substance, and I really had to ask myself, if I wasn't going to recover, what would I be remembered by? And it would be a fleeting memory of, she was a really nice girl, a fantastic student, and a couple loved ones may remember me, but beyond that, I didn't leave a mark in this world that could succeed me and build a legacy of impact. And so that lit a fire in me in my teens. I know, perhaps it was all this pent up teenage rebellion that I never got to actually explore and do. So when I ended up recovering after the age of 18 and re-entered society, I was really inspired that I would dedicate my life to trying to create some sort of legacy of inspiration that was beyond myself, to be of service to community and others. And one of those ways that that started is, when I was hospitalized and for so long, the doctors really kind of told me to really give up on all my dreams. And one of the biggest ones that they did is I was banned from doing, I had to drop my academics. So I was forced to drop out of school. And at that time, that was the only thing I had left of my life, of my identity, was my education. And so for that to be taken away from me, and for people around me to give up and just say, kind of like, well, this is what your life will be. I just had this stubbornness in me that was like, no, this is not the path that I choose. You are not, my circumstances do not define my potential. And so I secretly taught myself all school. My mother found correspondence courses outside of my school system that I could still get all my credit. So I taught myself accounting and calculus, and learned everything on my own. And by the time I recovered, I was 18. It was around June, the same time that normally I would be having graduation. And because of all the work that I had done on the side, I was able to actually not just graduate with my peers, but at one of the top of my class. And so in that moment, I had achieved the impossible, literally and figuratively. And I wanted to share that story with my peers to really empower them. If I could do it, they could too. That if I could rise above my circumstances, they could too. And so that started as a motivational speaker. It wasn't intentional by any means. I don't think any entrepreneur really intentionally charts their path. I think really our purposes find us in sometimes the most unexpected ways and the most subtle ways. And so I became a motivational speaker in the most unexpected way, where I wanted to share my story with some of my peers, And at the time there was this stadium in Canada. I'm from Canada, and there's this popular big stadium change maker event that was back in the day called We Day. It's no longer in existence, but that's a separate thing. But we would bring together like stadiums of 7,000, 10,000 students, and we'd all talk about social change. And it came to my town, and I met the talent leaders of it. And in that moment, I was just so inspired. Like, I would like to share my story on this stage. And so, fast forward a bit, the very first time I ever spoke live to anyone was in a stadium to 7,000 judging peers looking at me with all the lights on me. And I shared my story. And after that event, all these young people, my peers, came up to me and were just so inspired by what I had shared, and how they themselves were feeling so confused and doubting their abilities and lost and looking for something where they could matter, and disbelief, like having a disbelief around the things they cared about. If for instance, there was a girl who was super passionate about an endangered species that she wanted to save, and no one in her community cared about it and thought she was weird. And so it was just all these things of these all these lost sheep, so to speak, of my fellow
Wow.
flock. And so I ended up starting off that way. I ended up becoming a motivational speaker for a while. And as I did the circuit and spoke to school assemblies and my peers, you know, I felt like I wasn't doing enough. It was scratching the surface. I got um, unsatisfied, because as much as I would share my story and we would inspire crowds, that's great. But it's so surface level. They're going to go home and be like, oh, there was this great assembly. I'm so inspired. And then a week later, they're going to forget about it and go back to their regular lives. And I wanted something more. I wanted to create a deeper level of impact, something that could be sustained. And so I started to get involved in consulting projects, because at that point I had become an expert on what youth wanted and what they cared about as I was working with all these crowds of young people. So governments and brands started to come to me asking me, what are the characteristics of young people? How can we build marketing campaigns, and most importantly, education and innovation campaigns? And I started to become this bridge between private and public sector and young people, and seeing what both parties wanted, and this disconnect of brands and public sector wanting to tap into the innovation of young people, but young people lacking the opportunities where they felt like their voice was considered and that they were included in solutions. A very great example of this, to give you something tangible, is the classic approach to youth inclusion is, let's create a youth council, let's create a youth committee. So a government will create a youth council to like consult on their policies. And so what they'll do is they'll gather some young people together, and it'll be like a group of like 10 youth that are supposed to like represent the entire nation's voice. And in that group, what do? They give them a piece of paper or like a report, and they say, here's our policies, what do you think? We don't understand that that's actually not a co-creative process, because you've already predefined the solutions that young people are supposed to comment on. You haven't actually opened the floor for them to give you solutions outside of the parameters that you've already set. So you're not actually developing any intergenerational solutions. Instead, it's becoming this echo chamber of punting the ball and just having them hit it back of what they think on things. And it's again not creating the types of solutions that we really need. And so I was in that space for a while and kept seeing these disconnects. And I eventually said, you know what? I've been doing the circuit long enough. I know how to run events. I've seen all the events. And as a speaker, these are all the things I would want changed. I want more interaction with the audience. Q&A is my favorite part, and they barely do a lot of that. It's go on stage, shuffle you off. People try and get 2 minutes of your time after you're off the stage to say their hellos, shove their business cards at you, and then you're gone. And it's like, the best part of these events is the interaction with the audience, when they get that candid, open floor discussion. And so I took kind of my experience of what I wish my experience was as the talent, as the speaker, and then I flipped it. And then I put on my hat as the eager young student, and young person who's had to be a go-getter and fight her way into all these circles and create her own path and build her network, being kind of resourceful and creative. And what are all the opportunities I wish I had? And kind of put those together and ended up creating our first
Wow.
events. And
Wow.
that's kind of how it
So
started.
amazing. And not to interrupt, I just want to congratulate you on your personal story of healing. Truly an amazing story. And you were kind of strangely ahead of the curve, because I know during the years of the pandemic, a lot of people had to look in the mirror and ask themselves the same question, like, what's the priorities of my life? What's meaningful? They had time just to not be like a rat on in a labyrinth or running on a treadmill, but they actually had time to kind of stop and reevaluate their life and their priorities and see also what was happening around the world. You know, the other thing I wanted to comment is I really resonate with your story, because when I was younger, I was deeply involved in athletics, actually, football, baseball, and wrestling. And then in '82, after winning some national championships, I was really working to be an athlete. And I really enjoyed that, the whole spirit of competition and accomplishment. And I was training for the '84 Olympics. And shortly before that, I actually had a near death experience and was hit by a car. So my whole mindset changed from competition to collaboration. And I literally actually completely divorced myself from sports and started to work more in the area of arts and education and these types of things. So I want to compliment you on your success story of your recovery from something that, for me, I equated it very much to like a near death experience where I got to see uh, life in a different way, outside of the box of what society kind of, puts us in this box. And you said, oh, I was an overachiever, because it is true that society and we even call it like programming kind of sculpts people into being a certain type of way and fitting in and doing this. And there's kind of a system, and you want to be successful, a 9 to 5. And then you want to get married and have a house, at least in the States, and a picket fence. But there are those unique personalities and people and beings that I would call like avatar level innovators that have very specific destinies that, again, aren't necessarily something we consciously architect, but it's something we step into because of our understanding, because of our experience, because of our skills. And we start to get emerged in this whole field of how we become these kind of architects and co-creators of this spirit of innovation. And for me, it really talks directly to the core of what the regenerative movement is about. I know I work with Professor Alan Troutner. He's one of the co-founders of Earth Day, and he's been doing this green work for 54 years. And of course, a lot of the discourse has been about sustainability, which of course is important. But one of the things we find out is we can't just sustain; we also have to regenerate. So, for instance, during the pandemic, a lot of people were looking at the things that were falling away, that were part of a different type of paradigm, a different type of way of looking at things, either personally or ecologically. So it's very interesting, because they're very deeply woven together, the whole idea of being green, being sustainable, but also regenerative. And also in regenerative, how we allow the things that don't work anymore to kind of fall away and become the compost of innovation. But we also look towards, and it's amazing because you're doing that with youth, we look towards new ideas and new solutions to help deal with some of the world's issues. And of course, working with youth, it's something that's internal. A lot of times when people think about green or sustainability or regenerative, they think about agriculture, they think about food and water security, they think about even things like medicine as a whole new field of regenerative medicine, or they think about green technology. But a lot of times people miss the human element. And before we go on, I want to share your website in a minute. What we did actually for 4 years, right before the pandemic, and even during the pandemic here in the States, with a high level of consciousness and health awareness, we started to create these regenerative roundtables. And the idea was exactly what you were saying, giving people the opportunity to have an inclusive conversation about their bioregion, their watershed, what were the issues, and what were some of the things that could be proposed as solutions. And of course, during the pandemic was a very unique time. And of course, a lot of that work went virtual. But out of that, in the 4 years before the pandemic, we actually created what we called the hub, and the hub was kind of a place where we had 16 offices. We had different films and podcasting and media. We had community health clinic events. We had different types of educational programs. So the idea was like, okay, in a watershed or a bioregion, we can create these regional regenerative roundtables of bringing people together to start to be inclusive, because a lot of times we just count on government or we count on a certain nonprofit to fix all the problems. And a lot of times people feel excluded and that their voice is not heard.
Well,
So again, I'm seeing.
if I may add to that, so you mentioned
Absolutely.
a couple things in there that's I think it's really important to emphasize, and the first of which is you mentioned around creating the compost. So one of my favorite things about nature has innate wisdom, and it's innately circular. So you mentioned this from the beginning. The earth will regenerate, and it's humans that are stopping it from doing so. And so one of the things. With that in mind, though, is I think the mindset that we are taught from a very early age is black and white thinking, this and that. And so in generation, we put everything at odds. Everything has to be polarized and at odds. So it's current leaders versus young leaders. It's tomorrow's and today's against each other, not for each other. And the same goes with solutions. So it's either old systems, we got to scrap it all and we got to build something new. And what we don't understand is the very materials and ingredients of the old systems are the building blocks for the new. So it's not about discarding this for that. It's actually about bringing them together. And how do we take these Lego blocks and build a different kind of structure that now serves us in our current form and future pathways? And so I think it's really important for us to have that, as you have articulate a regenerative mindset, a circular thinking of not, and also an openness to have dialogue and not reject things that are not serving us, or groups of people or types of stakeholders, because those same people, stakeholders, or systems hold keys for the solutions we're seeking if we are open enough to look upon that and consider it. And so I think that's a really important part about why these, whether it's our Younga masterminds or whether it's your regenerative circles, why they're important and they have value. And a saying comes to mind to me that a colleague once told me about: you can't read the label from inside the jar. And I think that's really kind of characteristic of what you just mentioned about the maverick avatars and pioneers of all these solutions. Is it's kind of ironic that most of the traits that are the things that we admire in all these mavericks and change makers of the world are the very things that ostracized us when we were young. And I think this is a key point that I try and really focus on with the young people that we serve, especially because a lot of our community are already ones that are feeling outside of the spaces, that are they're feeling that they don't belong. And I was that. Like, I was so alien and ostracized from every circle because of my experiences. I left this world after after I was 13 and emerged back till I was 18. So I missed like all my teenage years. And so I didn't think the same way as my peers. I didn't have the same life experiences as my peers. And I'm naturally, for those who are not watching video but are listening, if you had a visual, you would see that I'm very colorful and quirky, and so I naturally just never fit in. And
Kelly, we found each other, sister. We found each other. I've actually toned down a little bit to blend in more, to be more successful, but I completely understand what you're saying, because choosing a career path, I've done event production, I've done music, I've worked in theater, I've worked in dozens of universities, and then how to implement, because sometimes people are anti-technology. So for me, again, in regenerative culture, we have to look at things like governance, economics, all these different things. And I do want to talk about the economic piece, but how do we
yeah,
innovate now? How do we use media? Now we have this whole world of AI, but how do we not lose our humanism, and how do we maintain the color and the panache of our personalities, of our spirit, of the unique beings that we all individually are, and be able to facilitate and kind of harness that into an ecosystem that actually contributes to positive change, whether we are a solutionary or, let's say, an architect of the new dawn or a visioneer. I mean, there's all these new words right now that are coming out.
Even an observer. Like, honestly, one of your greatest superpowers for anyone who's feeling like they're always on the sidelines, one of your greatest superpowers is your level of perception and observation of being on the sidelines. Do you know research shows that introverts are actually the best event hosts because they're so used to being on the outside of the circles that they notice everything that happens in an event and know how to curate an experience that's more inclusive for those who want to participate. So for anyone who's here right now with us, and if you ever feel like you're on the outside looking in, you can harness that into a power if you so choose. It's really how we see and internalize those experiences. And it took me a long time to realize that. I'm not saying I was always like, oh, this is cool that I don't belong, I'm an outsider, but it is something that can be eventually embraced and embodied in a way that can serve others in the community. And I think that's definitely something that you've articulated.
And I will say, I want to acknowledge your effervescence is quite inspiring and motivating. So I could see that you come from this incredible background as a motivational speaker. So I want to mention something just for a minute, and then if you
Yes.
want, I can give you a desk share. I would love to look at your website a little bit. And before we don't want to go too long because we know we also live in a world of kind of limited attention spans and everybody's so busy. Even though the pandemic taught us all to kind of slow down a little bit and have quality of life. But part of it is too, doing this work. It's such a holistic ecosystem that we're all involved in and co-creation. And like you said, the inclusivity piece is so key. And I love the fact that you're working with youth. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of it right now, but for our Earth Stock Eco Spiritual Summit in August, each day is focused on a different aspect of regenerative culture. So, of course, we would love to extend an invite because with that week, we're going to be broadcasting on several platforms. And we actually have the opportunity to reach a few 100,000 people as opposed to maybe just doing a Zoom room or Facebook Live. So it's a huge collaboration that we'll talk about. But I just want to acknowledge another opportunity to weave together because more than just, and this is what I loved what you said earlier, more than events just kind of being infomercials where everybody shows up and like, hi, I'm Bob. This is what I do. Here's my card. See you later. And there's no real connectivity. What we're doing with these Earthstock events, which is really related to the work that you're doing with these Younga festivals, is we're bringing people together that actually want to explore co-creation and collaboration and really start weaving together a holistic and interconnected ecosystem focused on the various aspects. It's kind of like the different spokes of the wheel have to come together so we have a tire so humanity can move forward as opposed to everyone just in a silo giving a quick infomercial and just really impressed with your work, and I'm so happy that we were connected. And would love to, if you're ready, I also have your website pulled up if you want to do a little tour of your website and talk a little more about some of your different programs and actually how people can help support you and your work or get involved with your organization. So, and
Oh, sure. So yeah, like as I mentioned, Younga, we have several components to our experience. Of course, our annual Festival for Impact, but our most popular program is actually our Youth Delegate Training and Scholarship Program. So if you go at the top to attend, and you'll see our Youth Delegate Scholarships. So our Youth Delegate Scholarship Program, every year we select up 2,030 young people that are either, and there's two ways that you can participate. Either one, we have an open call always to be accessible for a young person who finds the experience and wants to apply. Or can be nominated by one of our nearly 200 nonprofit partners around the world. These nonprofit partners help ensure that we're always kind of serving communities who may not be plugged into experiences and opportunities. They have focused grassroots initiatives in different communities around the world that ensure that we serve everybody from persons with disabilities to refugees to indigenous peoples and different minority groups as well. So that's how we really ensure that there was always accessibility and inclusion in our programs. And the experience, as you can see with some of our youth benefits, We put young people in the room with the leaders of today. We create live experiences. They are facilitated virtually because we started during the pandemic and we have participants in 185 countries. So the bulk of the experience is still virtual to be accessible. But we'll put you live in the room with, let's say, UN Women's Executive Director, and you get to mastermind on gender equality policy. Or we'll connect you with a CEO of an emerging blockchain company, and we can learn about all the ways that we can make data-driven decisions and use emerging Web3 technologies to build new programs. So the idea is they get 30 hours of live master classes and training that they can participate in. Runs through a 4-week program. And then outside of that program, we facilitate policy working groups. These policy working groups are related to our 5 thematic tracks: uh, education, mental health and well-being, inclusion and equality, peace and social justice, and climate action and sustainable living. And youth create their own policies and action plans. And in that program, we develop an annual communique report. This communique report is like a 100-page big magazine report that gets distributed to all of our various partners, including policymakers. And as you can see here, this is the map of where we cover. We cover nearly every country of the world at this point. And we create both the communique as an outcome, as well as at the end of the day, a lot of youth who go through the program end up creating their own youth-led projects that go back into the community. Whether we've had mental health organizations started, climate projects started, ocean plastic initiatives started. It's really fulfilling and inspiring to see what these delegates do following their program experience.
So one question I have:
Mhm.
when do you sleep?
um, well, when you do it's a cliche comment, but it is true. When you do something that is aligned with your purpose and fulfills you, it really doesn't feel like work. And so this is what brings me joy and fulfills my life. So I really enjoy most of the time on it. Now, there's obviously parts of business that no one really enjoys too much, but for the most part, my favorite experience is these 90 days in particular, where our core program runs from September to November every year. It's just so amazing to see what young people care about, and really see the innovation and ingenuity that's coming from our community. So yeah, there's different ways you can get involved. So the first is, if you're a young person under the age of 35, our program is for ages 15 to 35. So if you're under the age of 35, I encourage you to go to youngaworld.com and pre-register for when our applications open for 2024. If you are an organization that serves young people, or you know of an organization that's interested in as a nonprofit or charity, serves the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or youth communities, you can become one of our partners. We have over 200 annual partners that engage. It's free to engage, so you can join us there. And then lastly, if you're a brand who wants to tap into Gen Z audiences, we have your most comprehensive global youth distribution platform available for you to disseminate your impact campaigns, tap into youth-led consultations and innovation groups, and showcase your thought leadership across the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's definitely, we have a way, as you said, we have spokes for every stakeholder to join our global hub.
So if you don't mind, could you just touch on some of the SDG goals? I know that a lot of businesses now have sustainable development goal signage, that they support them and they're involved. And we don't have to, I think there's 16 or 18 of them. Could you just share a few of those? Because again, we try to reach, we do a lot of work with education, and sometimes not preaching to the choir, we find, is a very valuable tool. But just so people kind of understand the framework of your mission, can you share a few of those with us by chance?
Of course. So the way that Younga does our program, you can see here, if you're looking at the screen share, we have our color codes of our 5 thematic tracks. So what we've done is, there are 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And what we've done over these last 5 years is, each year we survey young people globally on their highest priorities of SDGs. And we've essentially, to simplify the 17, we've grouped them into five categories. So climate action and sustainable living will cover everything from SDG 12, which is responsible consumption, to 13, the climate action, 14, life underwater, life before and life on land, 15, and so on. And then we have education and future of work, which will cover your education goals and innovation and sustainable city goals. Mental health and well-being, which is going to cover obviously your SDG 3, as well as some of the cross-cutting goals. See, the challenge that we see is a lot of the UN SDGs are interconnected, and there's intersectional issues. For instance, the intersection of equality and inclusion programs and climate action and poverty. There's all these like intersection points. And so we found that by doing these five categories, we're able to do more effective cross-cutting of the issues and really allow young people to dig deep within the range of that category to find the thing that's most important to them in that moment. So, for instance, in climate action, maybe one year they really care about zero waste and zero consumption, and another year it's all about oceans and ocean plastics and the blue economy. And so we really allow the flexibility of young people to really spearhead the course of their experience and the topics of conversation that we're working on with the guest speakers and global leaders that participate.
Amazing. You're redesigning the SDG to be more effective. So again, another brilliant innovation. So in the time we have, I know that could you just give us a quick highlight of some of the global events that you participated in? I know that you were recently at COP28. And with the
Yes.
time we have, what the future of Younga world looks like. But I will say in what 4 years, you've already created this incredible legacy level project that is doing incredible solution-based work around the world.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you will see some of the, if you go to the attended drop down for success stories, you'll see some of the things that I'll be elaborating on there. Essentially, what we try and do, as we talked about at the beginning, is Younga is not the end experience. Your experience is, we want to create an ecosystem that's continually not just upscaling young talent, but then feeding them into programs and opportunities to perpetuate the solutions forward. And so what we do is we partner throughout the year with various events and programs that bring our youth delegates. So most recently in April, we had a delegation sent for the Youth ECOSOC Forum at UN headquarters. We've sent young delegates to the Commission of Status of Women at UN General Assembly. We are in the process of sending our delegates to the Cannes Lions Creative Media Festival in June. And as you said, last year we also sent delegates to COP28. COP28 was particularly special as we brought the very first youth in history from Bermuda. We had a delegation of 7 from Bermuda that came, and they're the first in history from their island to get to go to a COP. And they got to meet their premier and kind of government leaders from their own nation, but as well as intergovernmental leaders, and advocate for their solutions. The success story we're seeing right now with Emily Copeland, hers is a really cool one. She was an impact creator from our community, and we ended up doing a projection, an art projection on the side of the UN headquarters building that featured some of our youth activists, and her art and her story was featured on the side of the UN headquarters building in
Wow.
advance of the Stockholm 50 meeting. So I try and find creative and innovative ways to include young people in experiences, to embolden their voice and bring their solutions at the forefront, but in a way that's, as you said, cooperative and collaborative with existing systems and entities. So we're augmenting and enriching those events and experiences, not replacing. And I think that's a really important mindset that many entrepreneurs can look to adopt right now. Is not to compete to replace solutions that they're unhappy with, but how do we cooperate and align with the existing Lego blocks and make an experience out of it.
Amazing, amazing. So with the time that we have left, you're also involved in alternative or different kind of narrative as far as economics. Is that true?
Oh, so I think you're talking about our social token. So, one of the things that I've always loved and have interested me quite a bit is gamify social impact. And so, one of the things that we apply within our community is we have a BTGX token, which is essentially a social token, like a digital rewards program, loyalty program that we use using kind of emerging technologies that young people earn as they take action in our community for our various impact projects. And then they're able to redeem those for enrichment opportunities. So it's basically a model of gamified social impact that is rewarding participation and contribution.
Fantastic. And I know that you're in communication. I interviewed a few weeks ago Adam Stewart, who's doing his Karma Hub and his Karma Coin, helping to reward people for volunteerism for nonprofit organizations. So I wanted to say it's amazing because you really have a whole uh, full spectrum ecosystem that you're creating, which I think is really key because I know some people are just working within a specific niche or a silo or a spoke of the hub of sustainability or full spectrum design, or what I would call full spectrum solutions. But yeah, I see so many amazing parallels. One of the things we're doing right now is working with about 100 people who are focused on the various technologies and implementing solutions, kind of boots on the ground team that we can go into different places and help empower the communities with these technologies or processes or templates or foundations of how they can become more sustainable, green, and also regenerative. Because it's like that old parable. Give someone a loaf of bread they eat for a day, teach them how to farm, they eat for a lifetime. So, in the few moments that we have left, and again, I'm really excited, and we'll talk more just about. We would be honored to have you involved in our big global summit between August 19th and 25th. Actually, the whole event starts with the voices of the youth and starts with the voices of the elders. We're actually starting with a grandmother's council, part of the Earthstock ecosystem that's been happening working with indigenous people. And again, like you said, not just ping ponging or sounding boards. Is we found it really important to have an indigenous wisdom keeper council of people and also a grandmother's council. So the event will be starting with the voices of women, and which a lot of those voices in many traditions and cultures are still have been oppressed by kind of the dominant patriarchy or narrative for so many years. But then also focusing a lot on the elders and the grandmothers and of course the youth. So I'm really excited about the potential of how we can continue to weave together and support you. And obviously, your organization is off and running, and it seems like you have the support. I know a lot of people in this field of sustainability or regenerative have great ideas, but they find it very challenging to implement, to create structure, administrate, and most importantly, to get the funding they need to implement the solutions and create these systems and platforms. But it's been a incredibly inspired morning here, just seeing some of your work. But before we go, would you like to share any words of wisdom or inspiration with the viewers of this broadcast that'll be up on Regenerative Media TV? We'll be posting this later today and promoting it over the next few weeks to month. But any words of wisdom that you can leave our viewers with?
Yes, well, first, I would like to say for anyone who has been touched or inspired by anything that we've shared today, one, I encourage you to please connect with me. You can find me online at telierlovell.com for on all the socials, and Younga World, of course, to please share with any young people in your lives, siblings, nephews, daughters, children, anyone that you think that could fit in. We're happy to have them. And then also, if you are in a different place in your life and you are an impact investor or a philanthropist of your own right or have a foundation, we are currently fundraising for new patrons to join our community. And so I would be very interested in connecting if you resonate with our vision and mission and would like to be a part of creating this global impact that we've already started. Um, and then lastly, in terms of inspiration or wisdom, a nugget of wisdom, I think we really kind of summarizing what we've just shared. I think the the mindset of our future is collaborative, not competitive. And I think we're really moving towards for a need for unity. And to do that, we need to be open to have hard discussions and also to be open to new ways of living, being, working, and innovating. And because of that, I would say your best skill that you can have as we move towards the future is a curious mind. And so I would encourage you all to look upon your lives and think about where you could be more curious. Where's one area in your life that you could just add a little bit more curiosity to explore a little bit deeper, or to listen to that one podcast on a topic that you never thought you'd be interested in, or have that conversation with someone who thinks differently than you or has a different opinion than you on a topic, and just dive a little bit and be a little bit more curious and see what you will find.
Amazing. And also, as some of my indigenous friends say, we've come to a time in human history that we can't just talk and ear tickle, that we all have to, like you were saying too. And I love we have similar verbiage. We need to activate our superpowers and be a change maker, be a solutionary, be a visionary, be an innovator, be an architect of the new dawn of this new paradigm. And it's interesting because a lot of the indigenous communities and people I work with, they part of their traditions are looking at these various prophecies. And I was just in Palenque at the Eagle and Condor gathering, which was about the indigenous from the north and the south coming together to look at ways to be more collaborative and to co-create solutions. And then there's the eighth fire, which is another teaching. And so even in a lot of the indigenous mythology or cultural ethos, they have this idea that like now is the time and we are the ones. And exactly what you're saying is it's time to, get up off the couch, follow your passion, and to be part of this incredible transformation that's happening on the planet. The last thing I want to say is as we do our work with Earthstock, I definitely feel optimistic about, we realize part of our work is bridge building and showcasing the amazing people like yourself that are doing the work. So I want you to let you know you definitely have an emissary that can help point youth in your direction to get involved with the incredible work that you're doing in the world of Younga, and really a full spectrum ecosystem that you've created. And I've just really, not only do I feel even more inspired, but appreciate your effervescence and positivity and your inspiring spirit and presentation and the work that you're doing. So typically, sometimes when you have people on the phone, they're like, "This is what I do," and I sludge shoot paperwork, and we're doing social media, and oh my god, and we're doing heavy lifting, and we're doing education. But you've kind of flipped that on its head today by just your color and your panache and your whole spirit. So thank you so much for this time together and helping to inspire the leaders of tomorrow.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate your kind words and for helping to share our work and my message with your community. So, thank you for everyone who joined us as well and who made it to the end. I appreciate you, and I look forward to connecting with everyone.
There was not a dull moment, at least for me, this whole time we've had together. So, again, thank you. And we'll definitely be in touch and have a great day. And yeah, I look forward to weaving together and helping to be an emissary for your incredible work.
Excellent. Thank you.